my friend, and welcome to A Call to Leadership. This is a very special 6-part series that I've been waiting such a long time to share with you. This is what I call Radical Purpose, my very first book, inside the visionary minds of Milton Hershey, Walt Disney, and Steve Jobs. It's a journey, a deep, reflective, transformational adventure through the themes of this new book. I want to set the tone for you. It's not a teaser. It's not a promotional walkthrough. It's not a chapter summary audiobook. It's leadership formation. And for the next 6 episodes, we're going to explore the same patterns of development that shaped 3 of the greatest visionary leaders of the last century and a half. But we're not studying them as history lessons. We're studying them as mirrors that help us make sense of our own calling, of our own wiring, our own struggles, our own path toward building something meaningful. And if you've listened to the show, you've heard about my dissertation. This book was born out of nearly 500 pages of doctoral research, years and years and years of entrepreneurial experience, countless conversations with leaders who, like you and I, are hungry for more than profit, more than productivity, more than success without significance. So radical purpose isn't about building a bigger business. It's about becoming a deeper leader. It's about understanding why you were created, what shapes your vision, and how your work becomes a blessing far beyond your lifetime. So each episode in the series corresponds to a major theme in the book. And so by the time you finish all 6, you won't just understand visionary leadership differently. I really believe you'll see your own leadership differently. You'll see your story differently, your past differently, your current responsibilities differently, and most importantly, your purpose differently. So wherever you're listening from, your car, your office, at the gym, or early in the morning, before the house wakes up, I want to just thank you. Thank you for joining me. And I promise you, if you lean into the next 6 episodes, you won't just learn something, you'll become someone. So with that, let's begin at the beginning. Let's talk about the soil you were planted in and how your context creates your calling. If you're listening or watching today, I want to acknowledge something right from the beginning. You didn't press play on this episode by accident. People don't search for purpose casually when you saw the episode title. People don't explore this idea of visionary leadership because they're bored. People don't lean into a 6-week deep dive unless something in them is stirring. So let me just say this right here at the start. If you feel pulled towards something greater, it's because something greater, I believe, is pulling on you. And there's a reason you're here. It's over the next 6 weeks, we're going to walk right into that pull together. And today, in episode 1, we start with something that most leaders overlook. The one thing you never chose, the thing you didn't design, the thing that shaped you long before you ever knew you were being shaped. It's your context, your soil, if you will. It's the environment that you were planted in. But because before a leader even casts a vision, before a mission becomes clear, before purpose becomes power, a person like you is planted. And today, we're going to explore how the soil you come from, your upbringing, your parents, your neighborhood, your culture, your emotional environment, all of that has to do with the kind of leader that you are becoming. Not that we're blaming the past. We're not even glorifying it. We're just understanding it, so that we can reframe how we rise from it. So, take a breath. We're going all in. I'm Nate Salah, And this is a call to leadership. And I want to start here. Why context matters more than we think. Every visionary leader you've ever thought to read about or admired or bought their products, every entrepreneur who built something that outlived them, every dreamer who changed an industry or moved a generation. Friend, they didn't start with opportunity. They started with environment. You see, they started with a home dynamic, a set of, if you will, inherited beliefs. It's a lens. It's a lens which we each learn to interpret the world. You see, here's the key. When those early experiences are either encouraging or challenging, whether they're stable, whether they are totally chaotic, warm, cold, they shape the leader long, long, long before the leader shapes anything else. You see, I spent years studying three visionary legends, Mr. Milton Hershey, Mr. Walt Disney, and Mr. Steve Jobs. And before any of them shaped an industry, man, their environment, we can't pass it. It shaped them. And as we walk into their childhoods, not to just learn trivia, but to understand how context creates calling, you'll get a glimpse of what I've written in my book, Radical Purpose. There's a multi-part installment. This is the first of them. And it really digs into the sense of purpose as leaders. And we start with a little glimpse in Mr. Milton Hershey's life. You know, he was born between what I would call duty and dreams. He arrived on this planet in 1857 in a very rural Pennsylvania. And it was during this period of explosive change here in America. It was shifting from farming to factories. And you begin to see small towns becoming national brands. Hershey was born right on the edge of it all. But the real shaping didn't come from the country he lived in. It came from the house he lived in. His father, Henry Hershey, man, he was a dreamer. He was so full of ideas, charm, big talks. He chased prospecting, retail, fish farming, anything that felt like the next big thing. But follow through, consistency, reliability, that wasn't Henry. You see, he was an idea man without an execution plan. And Milton's mom, Fanny, well, she was like the opposite. She was hardworking. She was really deeply rooted in her Mennonite faith. She was disciplined. She was structured. She was grounded. And she believed dreams were dangerous without that sense of duty. So if you can imagine being a boy growing up between these two worlds, a father who soared in the clouds but rarely built anything that lasted, and a mother, well, she was planted firmly on the earth. She carried the weight that the family needed to survive, and that created tension. You can imagine between earth and between sky. That's what Milton Hershey's context was all about. And when his father pushed him into this printing apprenticeship he hated, Milton, he found a way out. He accidentally dropped his hat into the press, and he was fired on the spot. But then, guess what happened? He was free to pursue something that he actually cared about. You see, some people would see it as rebellion. Man, I think it's more clarity, even from childhood. Because his mom, then, her own clarity, enrolled him in this confectioner's apprenticeship. And everything changed. You see, he didn't just work hard, he mastered his craft. And at the apprenticeship, Royer, his mentor, he said Milton only needed to be told once how to do anything. See, Hershey wasn't just following a passion, he was following formation. His soil created this early hunger, this desire for stability, this drive to create something real. And this refusal to simply repeat the inconsistencies of his father. You see, the soil was shaping, in some ways, the seed. And then moving on to Walt Disney, his context, I would call it wonder in the middle of work and worry. You think about Walt Disney. Now, his story begins almost 50 years later, 1901, and in Chicago, in a house where his father, Elias Disney, believed deeply in two things. Number one, he believed in hard work, and two, he believed in moral correctness. So you can imagine for Walt, there was not much room for play and not much room for wonder. In fact, his childhood was filled with these early mornings. He would talk about delivering newspaper, sometimes brutal winters, and he was pulled out of school to keep the workload moving. When customers complained, his dad, Elias, he didn't hesitate, not a moment. Customer experience, bam, that mattered most, and Walt felt the weight of it. So from a young age, you can imagine Walt was living under these contentions of pressure, of expectation, of responsibility. But inside that same home, another shaping presence existed, his mom. Flora Disney, Walt's mother. She was gentle. She was encouraging. She was emotionally warm. She was the one who laughed at his jokes, admired. She loved his drawings, and she played alongside of his pranks. That's if you think about Elias as the stone, Flora would have been the stream. And Walt, he learned something super profound, that joy has to be created. You have to cultivate wonder and magic. You have to invent it. So you can see these two opposing types of people. His father has had this rigidity, but it didn't suppress him. It sharpened him. His mother's warmth didn't just comfort him, it fueled him. And this tension between duty and, I guess you'd say, delight became the foundation for everything Walt created, from Mickey Mouse to Disneyland to the movies. Walt wasn't escaping it. He was reinventing it. You see, his soil didn't suffocate him. It inspired him. And then moving on to Steve Jobs and his context, and these are all in the book, this tension of craftsmanship and chaos. So Steve Jobs, he grows up in the 50s and 60s, the 1950s and 60s in Cali. And so in California... Hey friend, it's your friend, Dr. Nate Salah. If you're tired of leading in isolation, if you're wondering if anyone else is trying to build a business and a life that honors God, let me tell you, you're not alone. That's why we created the G3 community. This is a space where kingdom-minded leaders grow together. We share wisdom, we pray for one another, and we take bold steps in our calling. If that sounds like your kind of tribe, come join us. Head to g3tribe.com or find us on Facebook. Grow, give, go together. Steve was adopted as a baby. He carried a bit of tension through his life. I guess you would call it a bit, maybe a lot. There's this contention that, and on the one hand, he was deeply loved by the parents who raised him. Yet on the inside, he was marked by this absence of the ones who didn't. So can imagine this duality that's shaping his intensity. And his dad, Paul, not his biological father, his adoptive father, he taught him something amazing. He taught him that craftsmanship with a level of care that most people would never notice. So he showed Steve how to build things like cabinets and all kinds of things beautifully, even on the hidden side that no one would ever see. This formed a principle you can imagine now, looking at his devices, you may have one, that never left Steve. The unseen matters. The inside matters. The soul of the work, it matters. So Steve's shaping forces of his environment, you consider it to be rebellion, counterculture, Eastern spirituality, whatever it might be in his life, this rapidly changing technological world, all of it influenced him. He drops out of college, but he stayed to study calligraphy. He hitchhiked. He experimented, he explored, he questioned everything. And those questions eventually became his vision. So you can see that Steve wasn't shaped by comfort. He was shaped by, well, contradiction. So there was this contradiction of love and of loss, of structure and of rebellion, craftsmanship, and a bit of chaos. So this soil he comes into has a hunger. It's a hunger for meaning, simplicity, a beauty that defines everything that he worked on. You can see this isn't really just like biography. It's baked into the understanding we have about leadership. You see, leadership scholars, they all point to the same reality. Leaders don't rise in spite of their context. Leaders rise because of how they interpret their context. You see, the soil, it becomes the script, and the tension becomes the training. And the environment becomes that early classroom of how purpose develops. Radical purpose in this case. And here's the part most people never consider. Your leadership, my leadership, their leadership. It didn't begin when we became an adult. It began when we were a child. Think about your worldview. Think about your resilience. Think about your sense of possibility. Think about your beliefs about work, about success, about power, about responsibility, all shaped long before we ever chose a career or a calling, not to trap us in the past, but to understand the blueprint of our internal wiring. Because until you understand the soil you came from, you won't fully understand the purpose you're being called into by God. And I'll be honest, this part of the story hits me hardest. Because for most of my life, I saw my own upbringing as something to endure, not something that formed purpose. I mean, I grew up on the west side of Chicago. If you've listened to the story, you know some of this. My parents, immigrant Palestinians, they love me, but they had almost nothing in common. Man, their marriage fell apart so early. My dad, he was locked up. My mom working multiple jobs, exhausted, stressed, overwhelmed. I mean, this is the reality of it. And they were there weren't bedtime stories. There was no stability in the rhythm. It was just survival, just tension, and many questions that no child knows how to answer. But I learned. I had to learn. I had to learn to read, not necessarily books, which I did, but I had to learn to read emotional temperatures of my home. I had to learn to solve problems early because nobody else could. I had to learn resilience, not by choice, but by necessity. And I didn't know it then, but that soil, that environment, that uneven, rocky ground, and it was forming these traits, developing them that I would one day rely on in my journey as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, running an accounting and advisory firm for over 30 years. It taught me adaptability, it taught me self-reliance, it taught me how to persevere through uncertainty, emotional awareness, a hunger for stability, and probably most relevantly, a deep desire to build something better. I didn't see it as just preparation when I was a kid. I didn't know what it was. But now looking back on it, man, it was the earliest shaping of a sense of radical purpose. Your soil may have been different. Your home may have been different. Your story may have been different. But that same principle is true. Your early story, your early context, it planted the seeds of your calling. And as we close episode 1, I want to leave you with the same question that changed how I see my own story. What if your origin story wasn't an obstacle, but the soil of your purpose? And what if this week we reflect on some questions? Think about that. Think about what messages our childhoods, our environments teach us about work, about success, about identity, about responsibility. What emotional atmospheres we grew up in and how it still is influencing us today. And where can we now see the seeds of our leadership showing up long before we had language for them? Friend, this is where radical purpose begins. Not in ambition, not in goals, not in strategy, but in understanding the ground beneath our feet. Because nothing in our story was wasted. Nothing in your story is wasted. Not the struggle, not the limitations, not the contradictions, not even the pain. It all formed the leader you are becoming. And when we move into the next episode, we're going to explore the traits that emerged out of this soil, the hunger, the curiosity, the reliance, the independence that show up in every visionary leader. But for now, sit with this one truth. You were planted on purpose, for purpose, with purpose. And your story isn't defined by the soil you came from. It's defined by the seeds that grow in you now. Thank you so much for supporting our program. We couldn't do it without you. I want to just take a moment to honor you in prayer. We don't want to build anything without you, God. We're not a business, not a family, not a future. So we invite you into every room we walk into this week, boardrooms, living rooms, prayer rooms. Let your spirit lead us. Let your voice guide us, and let your power move through us to bless everyone we encountered. We are yours in your holy name. Amen.